Good evening. I'm Corey Cantrell, member of the League of Women Voters of Sioux City, and I will be serving as the moderator for this evening's Woodbury County Supervisor and County Attorney Candidate Forum. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization whose membership is open to citizens over the age of 16, male or female. We do not endorse candidates or political parties. We do, however, work to educate ourselves and the public on issues affecting our citizen and government. That is why we are committed to hosting candidate forums like this one. We would like to thank Western Iowa Tech Community College for the use of their facilities for tonight's forum. In addition, thank you to Chris Mansfield and the mass media students for making the excellent arrangements for tonight's forum. Tonight's forum will stream on WIT TV YouTube, League of Women Voters Sioux City Facebook page, and the KCAU website, SiouxlandProud.com. The Facebook page will be monitored for any questions coming in for the candidates. I would like to thank the League of Women Voters of Sioux City for Planning Committee members for their assistance in coordinating tonight's forum. Assisting in tonight's forum as a timer is Sayri Parker, who is one of the mass media students here. Serving as our panelists are Bernie Scalera from the League of Women Voters, Woody Gottberg, the Greater Sioux City Press Club, Sophie Erber, the KCAU evening anchor, and Pablo Gutierrez, WIT communication, mass communication student. On behalf of the citizens of Sioux City, I want to thank our candidates for their willingness to run for public office. Election Day is Tuesday, November 8th. All candidates for contested races were invited to participate. Tonight we will have two segments. The first segment will be for the County Supervisor District 2, and the candidates are Daniel Bittinger, Republican, and Jeremy Dumkrager, Democrat. In our second segment, we will have the county attorney candidates. There were also several uncontested races for County Supervisor District 4, Matthew Ung, and for County Treasurer, Tina Bertrand. In just a minute, I will ask each candidate to give their relative qualifications and give them a 90-second opening statement. Then the panelists will pose their questions. Both candidates will answer the same question. And then I will call upon the next candidate to pose a question to the candidates. We'll switch back and forth who answers first. You'll each have 60 seconds to respond to each question. After around 25 minutes, we'll move to audience questions. Audience members are encouraged to write their questions on the note cards they were provided and hand them to the League of Women Voter members during the panelist question period. The Facebook will also be monitored. At the end of the audience questions, candidates will give closing statements. We will take a short break and then come back for the second segment for the county attorneys. So, gentlemen, you have 60 seconds, let's do 90 seconds. Please state your qualifications for serving as a county supervisor, and also tell us what motivates you to run for this office. Mr. Bittinger, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Sure. All right. Thank you. I just want to say thank you to the Sioux City League of Women Voters, our audience, and those tuning in via live stream for this opportunity to come and share why I'm running and why I enjoy living and working here in Woodbury County. Been married for 20 years. I've got 3 children, 17, 15, and 13 years old, and we've lived here in Iowa for almost 9 years here, coming up here this spring here. Qualifications and why I'm running. I've worked for university and student development. I also sat on the Judicial Review Board, which oversaw all criminal and civil infractions, and we worked with our school attorneys and local law enforcement. I've managed a restaurant, and then recently I've been pastoring here full-time in Sioux City here for almost 9 years at Crosspoint Church here. Some of my main priorities and why I'm running is just 4 simple things. First is just budget accountability. County's got to spend less than what comes in, appropriate funds wisely, and put more money in reserves for increased costs that are coming up due to inflation and stuff like that. Secondly, just economic development. We need to attract more businesses here and people here to Woodbury County. Everyone needs more workers. And third, supporting the rule of law in our sheriff's department. And then lastly, just principal governance are my 4 top priorities, but why I want to run and help implement these things in Woodbury County. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dumkrager?
Thank you, Corey. Thank you, panel, students that are monitoring my time. Thank you. Dan, thank you for showing up today. I know last night no one showed up from your side of things. I really appreciate it. It's really important to have an active participation in this. And I'm glad I didn't wear that shirt because I have the exact same shirt at home. Would have been really
Good.
weird.
That's right. I want to be matchy. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
My name is Jeremy Dumkrager, and I was raised on a farm right next to a gravel road. I spent the entire time in one school, K through 12, same building, just about the same 18 kids there. I graduated there at Consolidated. It's no longer there. It's gone. The town is slowly getting smaller and older. I attended Western Iowa Tech for a couple of years. Then I went to Morningside College, not Morningside University. I've worked on factories. I've worked in farms, retail, temp work, all kinds of different things, nonprofits. I managed a behavioral care facility for a little bit, and now I'm a teacher working in the Sioux City school system. Above that, I am first and foremost a father and husband. I am running for this seat because basically I'm tired of politicians doing what they want. If they want a raise, they vote themselves a raise. If they go over budget on a project, Washington will bail us out for it, just like they did with the jail. We have a mental health crisis that's happening. It's burdening our law enforcement. Our firefighters are going on all these calls. Our hospitals are overrun with people just using the emergency room like an urgent care. And if you haven't noticed, there's a huge panhandling issue, and I think that's a symptom of a greater problem that we have to deal with. It's out of control. And I'm also running for this seat because I'm tired of our kids having very few objects. And my time's up, so there you go. Sorry about that.
All right, thank you. We'll now go to our panelists for their questions, and Bernie Scalera, we'll start with you.
First of all, good evening, and thank you for being here today. I was going to ask your top priorities, but you both kind of touched on that a little bit already. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to, you can add that in as with this question, but what county services, if any, should be cut before raising taxes?
And Mr. Dumkrager, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Good question. I think what county services should be cut? I think there's some issues maybe. That's a very good question. I've been concentrating on what needs improved, what needs cut. I would think we need to look at maybe some different kinds of weed services, things like this that might be out of budget. Of course, the big issue now is the jail. It's way over budget, $20 million. It is a huge boondoggle. And it's kind of like biting into a hot piece of pizza right now. You took the bite, you gotta finish it. You can't just spread it out anymore. It's got to go down, and it's a hard swallow, but we got to do it. And I think that the biggest thing we have to worry about is the issue with policing and enforcing that jail. That's going to be $1 million over the expected budget to run that every year. I think that's a huge problem, and it's an issue we definitely have to look at.
Thank you. Mr. Bittinger.
Yeah, it's a good question. I agree. At the moment, I would not say there's one specific area I could pinpoint that would have to decrease first before an increase in the tax levy. But I would say probably some of the peripheral issues, maybe there might be some deferred maintenance that could be pushed off, that could save money here or there. Mm-hmm. But I'd have to look into that. So I don't truthfully have a great handle on that. What I would say would have to be cut. I would look to also, is there other, some of the benefits for the employees? Is there better rates you could get? Could you go back to the bargaining table with some of the rates, insurance, other providers like that, renegotiate rates that could help still keep the same services and the quality of the benefits, but maybe get a better rate. So that's what I would say.
Thank you. Mr. Gott?
All right. When you're on the Board of Supervisors, you're overseeing a county with a multi-million dollar budget. Almost nobody that comes into the job has experience dealing with multi-million dollar budgets. I'm sure both of you would probably not be an exception to that. So tell me what kind of budget experience you have that would qualify you to oversee a budget like that.
Sure. Yeah, I'll go.
Mr. Bittinger, go ahead.
Sure. That's very accurate. Yes, my personal finances are not the county's budget. A few things I would say would qualify me is when I ran the restaurant, our budget was a little over $450,000 a year, and so I oversaw that. My budget at the university was quite smaller. With that, my current church budget, once again, yes, it's not in the millions of dollars. However, I would offer there's sometimes a misconstrued that you have to have either a high IQ and business acumen or have managed a multi-million-dollar budget to be able to handle finances. It's been said before that handling a budget a lot of times is 80% behavior, 20% knowledge. I'm willing to learn. I'm a learner. I'm constantly learning about my own personal budget, my church budget, myself. And then when we were at the restaurant, we were under our budget limits. We put money back in the bank. And I would say that's behavior is what drives most budget spending. And so I would say you could come look at my personal budget, my church budget, and I could show you by behavior that money would be saved and that money would be wisely appropriated. So thank you.
Mr. Dumkrieger.
I'm fortunate not to have my daily job is to worry about the school's money. Obviously, that's a big chunk of that budget. As of the jobs that I've had, I've been fortunate probably to work on the human side of things where I'm not crunching the numbers. I'm lucky that way. My personal budget, of course, my family is well kept anymore these days. Haven't had a lot of experience with that, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that if a jail, is budgeted first at $40 million, and then it comes back after COVID at $50 million, and it then jumps up to another $60 million, and that's an entire elementary school we could have built for that price. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist. If you got the money, you can spend it, or you save it. But if you don't got it, you can't spend it.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Erber?
Hi, yes, thank you. Both of you gentlemen probably very aware of a recent news story. It's been going on for weeks, if not months, but in this area, there are multiple companies that are interested in coming in and putting a proposed pipeline through multiple counties. So, of course, Woodbury County is not the only one, but that would be the job you're running for here. A lot of landowners for it, a lot against it. What would you do if you got the job to kind of bridge the gap between both sides? A lot of landowners don't want those companies on their property surveying. What do you have to say to all of the landowners here in Woodbury County as far as those pipelines go?
Mr. Dumkrieger.
I don't want the pipelines here. I think that the pipelines are a dangerous thing. I know everyone was worried about the windmills being a problem for their health. If you read into what these pipelines will do to someone if they explode, if they leak, then will not only ruin the ground, they will vaporize into CO2 clouds and travel down the valley. If it goes past your house, it will asphyxiate you. It will drown you. There will be no one to come save you because they can't get in there. You have to have specialized equipment to get inside that cloud of death. And it's just a horrible, horrible idea. I understand the idea behind it is to try to reverse climate change a little bit. There are other things you can do. You can put in prairie lands, and it can offset that too. And people think of the word pipeline, they think one pipe. This thing goes out, it looks like a subway map if you look at it. It's dangerous, and especially eminent domain, if they do that, that's wrong. I say no. And if this does go through, we have ordinances where they have to pay for everything, every training, every piece of equipment, and then we're going to hold them liable for any damage and death.
Thank you. Mr. Bittinger.
Yeah, off that, a lot of what Jeremy just said, I'd actually would agree with on that. I'm personally not a fan for the carbon pipeline. I think, first of all, it's not a public it's not a public company. It's not for the public good. It's a personal, privatized company. So I believe that using eminent domain would not qualify for that. And so I believe that landowners have the right to do what they want with their land. I do agree, right, from my own reading and research, there's a lot of potential health hazards with this that would be very hard to mitigate and control if a pipeline rupture would happen. And I don't see foreseeable future how would sometimes these pipelines be able to provide the emergency response, the vehicles, the health response. I don't see how they would be able to provide that in some of the rural outlying counties and homes and places. I do agree with Jeremy that it does spider out. I've seen the map myself, and I don't think that pipeline would be good for our county personally. But if it were to be passed, or that, I would say that there could be ordinances put in place that would, in essence, like the windmills, almost in essence kill the pipeline. And so I would be against it personally.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gutierrez.
So what is being done to keep housing affordable here in Woodbury County, especially with students coming out of the dorms and into the society here in Sioux City? Or Woodbury, my bad.
Mr. Bittinger.
So your question is what's being done to make affordable housing?
Yeah, or housing affordable.
Housing affordable, okay. Well, with that, I don't have it. Once again, I don't have it necessarily. I don't know a lot about that right now. What is being done specifically for that? I know that builders are building as fast as they can and get materials and get staff to build homes. It does seem that what's being built is very much high end and high rent. And so with that, I have to look into that more to research that, but I don't have a clear answer for you. That's something that, yes, the county could look into, but sometimes that falls outside the purvey of the supervisors, necessarily controlling affordable housing or rent, stuff like that. So,
Gotcha.
Okay, Mr. Dumkrieger.
Yeah, I agree. It doesn't fall in our privy, but listen, I have a 4-bedroom, 3-bath house, jacuzzi. It's very nice. My mortgage every month is like $775, right? It's very reasonable, very manageable for a very nice house. I see ads for small apartments that are up into thousands of dollars, $1,200, something like this. Very expensive. We got to do something. What that is exactly, not exactly sure. Like Dan, I have to look into that, but something has to be done because it's not sustainable. My kids are just graduated from high school, like this last couple of years. They cannot afford to live on their own with the wages that they make going into a job for the first time. So it's definitely something that the city and the county would have to work on with in conjunction with state funding.
Thank you. And we'll go back down to Ms. Galero.
Recent controversy has arisen related to the use of farmland for wind energy. Do you support moving the wind turbine setback from 1,250 to 2,500 feet recently set by the Woodbury County Supervisors, and why or why not?
Mr. Dumkrieger?
First, all right. So I'm pro windmill. When this first came out, I looked at it objectively with an open mind. I went out and I found the first windmill that I came across the next county over. We got close enough to it so that we weren't trespassing. The wind was blowing and it seemed to be quiet. I couldn't hear anything really over the chirps of the crickets. I got a video of it. It's pretty interesting, right? I believe in windmills. I think people have the right to have what they want on their property. If you're going to build it right next to their house on that land, that's a problem maybe. But if your land, your property, but it's a catch-22 a little bit, and I'm going to get accused of, kind of having it both ways here. But listen, those people showed up at that meeting. They came and they hounded them for weeks and weeks at a time, and I understand the way that they voted. Because when you want something, if people wanted those windmills, you have to go out and ask for them. Put them on there. Let's just have everybody have their say. If it's just one-sided and there's 30 people in the room for weeks at a time, the supervisors are going to vote that way, and they did. If I was that supervisor on that board, I probably would have voted for the windmills to exist. But it would have been tough.
Mr. Bittinger?
Yeah, I attended all those meetings for the setback meetings, and over this last year I've been going to the supervisor meetings. Yeah, the room was full. There was over 90 against the windmills. 3 people there were for it. I agreed with the setback increase, 2,500. I do agree that people should have personal rights, property rights. However, I do think realistically we live in society. You can't build a warehouse next to my property, next to my neighbor. There has to be some rule and order, and codes to what can be built and what can't be built. Windmills are fine, but it seems like they're being propped up with by our government that is picking winners and losers in the energy field and personal companies. It's been said, Warren Buffett said in public, on air, mainstream media, that he's doing this because he's receiving government subsidies for the windmills. So if a businessman is only doing this because he's getting money from the government, our taxes, then why would I want to promote this type of energy that may not be sufficient and self-reliant? So I would say that's to say I am all for the setback increase, and I would have voted for that.
Thank you. And Mr. Gottberg?
Well, as the jail project goes along, there is a lot of concern over the fact is how over budget is it going to be. Jeremy, when you announced running March 13th, one of the lines you had, which was a good attention getter, was you wanted to put the screws to the jail project. Well, obviously, we're going to have a new jail, but it's still up in the air as to what that final cost will be.
Right.
So for each of you, if elected, and if you're faced with dealing with whatever the overrun is for it, what are your ideas to deal with that, which hopefully don't involve a tax increase for citizens of the county?
And Mr. Bittinger?
Sure. Well, let me start off. Again, went to all those meetings, sat in those meetings, looked at the projected costs, all that. Yes, the jail has gone over budget, but it's also everyone has faced budget increases with inflation. Prices of materials have went up. Any one of you from the public right now, any candidate could go right now into the budget office and see line by line what has increased from the manufacturers and from the construction. It's all county record. Everybody can see that. I would say a few things. The money for that jail, yes, it's increased, but it's due to inflation. The voters did approve 57% to do the jail. Now I know people would say, well, that was what the cost was. But once again, whenever you build, you do build in cushion. But then again, there's sometimes overruns that you can't always predict. AKA, COVID happened, everything went up. I run my church, my supplies for my church went up. I've had work done on my church. What I paid for maintenance of my church 3 years ago was went up during this, and so I understand it's a difference, right? Versus a few $100s versus millions overrun. But the ARPA funds were used and approved, and once they were checked out by the government authorities that ARPA funds could be used, and so with that has covered the most part, the $15 million overrun of that. So,
Thank you. Mr. Dumkreger.
Thanks to the Democrats in Washington who put that budget through to try to save American economy. Listen, this jail, right? I voted for this jail. I believe in the jail, but we needed a new one. There was poor structure at the other one. It was overcrowded. And when things are overcrowded, it's dangerous for the officers. It's dangerous for the inmates who are there. We needed a new jail. I voted for that. But I didn't vote for $20 million over budget. I understand that COVID happened. I understand that everything's going up. But we need to really, we should have taken a look at it to start with. And if I was going to do this, so I put me back in time 2 years, I would have said, let's rebid this out, make sure we get everything cost effective, and let's hire people from Iowa to build this facility, right? So at least it's staying in this county, or at least this general region of the state of Iowa. It's a boondoggle.
Thank you. Ms. Erber?
Yes. Both of you mentioned in your opening statements and introductions that attracting business was something that you think should be a priority for Woodbury County, because that is ultimately what gets people here, what gets tax dollars flowing here, right? So if you would like to lay out for everyone watching tonight and your voters potentially, what would you try to do to incentivize businesses to not only come here, but stay here in Woodbury County?
Go ahead.
All right, so we've seen some layoffs in South Dakota that the 500 jobs, it's horrible. We need to look at taxes, what we can do to work with that, because we have to compete with South Dakota, who's also having their own problems apparently right now with those taxes. And it's hard for us to do that when they don't have to pay any income tax, and we do. And we also have a problem where we have low unemployment here, right? There's not a lot of jobs to be had, right? Or a lot of workforce to be had, right? So how do you entice new companies to come in to set up a big operation and there's no one to work, right? So it comes down to world-class education. We need to work with the school system to make sure that they're doing those opportunities, like the trades building that they're building out in the schools, which is a great new function of the schools, to teach them trades. Like when I was in college, it was sort of this myth that you had to have a 4-year degree. I loved working with my hands. What did I do? But I had to go to college because that was the important thing to do, right? So I became an art teacher, right? Should I have done something else? Yeah. Well, let's teach the kids that they can do something else here, right? So they're not moving away, so they can grow their own business here. We should have used some of that COVID money that went into that jail to prop up small businesses, because Walmart got to stay open and they didn't.
Thank you. Mr. Bittinger?
Yeah. With economic development, a few things. I would say the main thing as a supervisor, I would partner with the Siouxland Chamber of Commerce and the Siouxland Initiative and help go through there. The Siouxland Chamber really is their job is to help attract businesses, provide support for business owners, help them to grow, expand, attract workers. Sometimes I think that sometimes the county supervisors are looked to as they have to be the catalyst, or I would say the savior to help bring in economic development. It's an important part of the supervisors overall looking at the aspects of the county and what's going. But I would say really the supervisors need to partner with the Siouxland Chamber of Commerce more and work with them. Everyone looks for the magic bullet. What's the magic bullet to bring jobs here, right? We have low unemployment. Siouxland's unemployment is way below the national average. Every business owner I know is looking for people, like Jeremy said, they just can't find them. There's not enough. There's plenty of quality jobs. My thing more is how do we find the employees? How do we get the people here? There's a lot of jobs that are opening, companies can't expand because they don't have the people. So if we can find the people, that might help create some extra revenue and actually be a selling point that there's people finding jobs that they need that are good and high-paying jobs. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Gutierrez?
With officer-involved shooting deaths, how can you ensure that Woodbury County residents that they're safe, or how can you ensure that they are safe?
Mr. Bittinger?
Can you say that one more time for me, please?
With officer-involved shooting deaths, how can you ensure Woodbury County residents that they're safe?
Okay.
My bad. Question might be a little bit
one more time.
So I think
What are you
that
trying to-
he's asking that since we have had shooting deaths that have been police related,
Okay.
how do we help the citizens to feel safe?
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I just want to
I
clarify
bet.
that. I want to
Yeah.
understand your question correctly.
It's what I do.
That's good. Well, I would say what we do is, with regarding the sheriff's department, once again, we just have the sheriff, which Sheriff Sheehan does well, communicating, going out, and when something happens, when there's an incident, having it out there, going out, doing some good PR, communicating to those that are involved, those that may be involved, or whatever parties are involved, having them meet with the sheriff, talk with them, talk with, whatever necessary entities need to be there to make sure there's accountability, openness, it doesn't need to be brushed under the rug. But I think our sheriff's department already does communicate and is trying to work with the people, make sure they're be transparent and working with them. But that's what I would say. I would say to the sheriff's department wants to make sure they're safe. I don't think any officer, if you talk to any police officer, no one wants to shoot, no one wants to have an incident ever where there's a death or any time a weapon is drawn, they want to avert that. So making sure they have the training, for non-lethal means too. And I know our sheriff's doing that with new body cameras and new tasers. So.
Thank you. Mr. Dumkrieger.
Yeah, I was just going to say having body cameras is a good step for keeping the community feeling safe, that they're being monitored when this happens. So if something happens, they don't have to worry about. There's accountability that can happen. Also, I think a quality training that they're receiving, but we also need quality people in those positions. I know that we are having trouble filling some of those positions in the jail. We can't just hire anybody for these jobs. These people have to be qualified people. I thank them every day when I see them. I don't want to do that job. That's not for me. It's a very thankless job. But I think that the body cameras and the training is essential to making sure that the community feels safe. But also that there's an open dialogue between the sheriff's department and law enforcement and the community. The Sioux City does the unity in the community thing with the police. I'm not sure if the sheriff department does that with anybody in the county, but I think it's important just to have that dialogue to get to know each other. And so we're not just foes. We are, we're partners in making a safe, crime-free community.
Thank you. And I think we have time for one more round of questions. So, Ms. Scalera.
How can the county best support the needs of all residents of all ethnic, sociological, and demographic segments of the county, including those of immigrants?
Say that one more time. Best support?
How can the county best support the needs of all residents?
Okay. Good
Of all
question.
ethnic, sociological, and demographic segments of the county, including those of immigrants?
Right. Is it me? Mm-hmm. All right, good. So I think that it's important. It kind of goes back to the same thing with the sheriff's department. I think the local government needs to extend a hand out. We need people in the community. We need those folks to come here to wherever they're coming from. We need them. We will take them. We need to help them become accustomed to our area, to welcome them in, but to also make sure that they have the things that they need. We point them to the human resource department up at the city hall to make sure that someone isn't taking advantage of them. If they can't speak English, we'd maybe send them to the Mary Tralia House to make sure that they have all the functioning that they need to live an everyday life. I also think that it's important to do things as a community together, have these cultural events so that the people who live here for years and years can meet these folks and they feel welcomed. I know I go out and I knock on the doors and I've talked to folks and they come to the door and they have their green cards because they're scared I'm a guy with, I'm trying to take them away or something. That's not the case. I am there to talk to them about their community and they're scared and I think that we need to help them not be scared anymore.
Okay, Mr. Bittinger.
Yeah. To Bernie, answer your question, I would say a couple things. First and foremost, having wise financial accountability and spending, which our county's been doing. We can have everyone come, but if there's no money, if there's no foresight, if there's no long-term saving to be able to provide for all the services the county does, it's not going to help anybody. So I think one thing, a lot of times the people that come to our county, they may be coming to our country, from another foreign country that are coming here and love Woodbury County. They may be leaving where governments have spent money unwisely, have embezzled and just wasted the taxpayers' money. And so I think one thing we do is to honor them is to spend wisely, think long-term with programs, and save for those programs. Secondly, I would say their protection and safety. A lot of the immigrants that I meet, people that are here coming from either moving from different states, have said, man, we love the safety here. We love that the Sioux City Police and our Sheriff's Department take the rule off seriously. They want to make sure people feel protected and safe. Not everyone's perfect, no one's perfect, but they're doing the best they can with what they have and the equipment, and they want to make sure that people are safe. I think that's another way to honor all people of all different backgrounds and making sure they feel safe and protected, and if they have businesses or nonprofits they're running or whatever, their kids are protected.
Thank you.
And that honors them. Yep. Yep. No problem.
And Mr. Gutberg.
Well, supervisor pay has been one of the talking points with the ads in this particular race. Overall, out of the 5 supervisors, it's a relatively small total part of the budget, but would you make changes or want to make changes in supervisor pay, and why?
Mr. Bittinger?
Sure. Right, yeah, it's been brought up. I would say people need, I would encourage them to do some research. Supervisor pay makes less than 1% of the total payroll of Woodbury County. Woodbury County payroll is over $31 million a year, and so supervisor pay is less than 1% of that entire pay. I would say a lot of people, yes, it seems like there's this big persona that with supervisors pay is this big, bad, overspending, horrible, but if you look, we're 46th ranked. The supervisors pay is number 46 out of the state of Iowa, and regarding their pay, regarding for size of budget, the amount of people in the community, and the amount of employees that they oversee. So of course, no one, a lot of times, right, you don't always want to keep paying elected politicians, but I would say I believe the workman's worth their wage, and I believe also too, the supervisors had a chance to take a 22% raise this year, and they turned that down. And so I would propose the question, if they were money hungry, if they wanted bigger raises, more money for themselves, why would anyone turn down a 22% raise? And so that question's not been answered, and probably can't be answered. So, thank you.
Mr. Dumkreger?
Well, I'll answer it because it's politics, right? They have this constant I'm not going to vote for myself for this raise, but then sometimes they'll vote for themselves for this raise, and then they'll say, well, I'm going to take the raise, but I'm going to donate this to something else. All this extra money is going to go to something else. They're going to donate to some charity, right? Come on, just set it. We set it to the median income, right? It's set. Nobody ever has to get in this situation again, right? No more voting for themselves, none of that, right? It's set. Then the perception will be, hopefully, that the supervisors are working to increase that median income by bringing up wages, because the only way my wallet's going to get thicker is if your wallet gets thicker. That's the whole goal of the whole entire thing. The budget's small for them, 1%, it's politics, right? They have shell games going all over the place. It's just a big political shell game.
Thank you. Ms. Erber?
Thank you. Both of you gentlemen mentioned education being a priority in the county. It's a large county. We have lots of schools here. I will open that question up to also the issue of childcare. There's a serious shortage here in Woodbury County, which if you want the workers that you mentioned we need here to thrive, they need somewhere to put their kids while they're working. So any plans as far as education, early childhood education, childcare, I will open that topic to you both for priorities.
And Mr. Dumkreger?
All right, great, thank you. So when my wife and I met, she was working at a daycare making $7.25 an hour. I'm not certain what those folks are making now, but I bet it's not much more than that. And people don't want to open these places because it's hard to afford it. And people don't want to take their kids to these places because, it's expensive. Why work when you can just keep your kid at home, right? And likewise, it's really hard to find people that you trust, right? So we have to find a way, as a community, and the state's going to have to chip in for this, to find a way to make these daycare centers more, one, accessible, two, maybe work with different entities, even like Western Iowa Tech, places like this to teach childhood education, where kids who are learning to do this can possibly study in real life, as in a safe environment that's with good people, that the kids will be safe and everything. But there's tons of ideas. I'm sure there's tons of ideas around the country that we could steal, which I'm not above stealing ideas from other people. So I'm not. It's because it's important for the community. That's the best thing. So my time's up. There you go, sir.
Mr. Bittinger?
Right. I do agree with Jeremy that, right, looking at different ideas, different states, different communities, there's a lot of structures out there that we could look from, tweak for us, that works for us. But I would say I would go to the churches and nonprofits. To keep your nonprofit status, you have to prove that you are relieving the government of a burden, of a financial burden and of a civic or duty burden. And I would go to them to saying, hey, there is money to be made in childcare. A lot of times they're not paid a lot, and so that's something we don't want to address with their pay to help have the quality people there. But I would go and look to more the private sector or the non-profit sector, and seeing what can we partner with them. I think sometimes it can be a fallacy to think the county government has to supply or work with to provide childcare. I think there's some legal issues with that and some things that could bog down the mission of the county. But I think if we could partner, once again, go out in the private sector, work with nonprofits and churches and help them start a daycare, start a quality certified daycare that's with the state, you'd be surprised how many of these nonprofits and churches could actually do that, provide a service to their community and help the county government not have to bring on that expense and or have to worry about that, but actually provide jobs for others too. So,
Thank you. Mr. Gutierrez?
So I guess going back to education, there has been an increase in threats and acts of violence in schools K through 12 and even higher education institutions. What can be done to ensure a safer environment for both students and teachers alike so they could focus on education?
Mr. Bittinger?
Okay, that's a great question. Well, you know, that question is constantly being proposed. I don't know if there's one silver bullet, once again, answer to that. I think the greatest thing we could do as a county is help promote mental health and counseling availability for those that are struggling with that. Secondly, I would say I would encourage the citizens to slow down, take time with your families. A lot of times when you look at some of these incidents that have happened, a lot of times people have been loners, they don't feel connected, they don't have a family. Now some of those are very hard tangibles to get, they get a handle on or say, here's a solution, here's the fix to that. I would say encouraging people to love their families, slow down, maybe providing workshops. Maybe the county could help promote, have a promotion of family days or community action days where we go out, and have, if you need a friend, you need someone to talk to, provide places where people come and share, stuff like that. But I don't know if there's one thing I could say that would solve the issue or make it better. I think another thing is making sure schools are locked, and also screening. If you know something, you see something, a student, say something to your teacher, to the principal, say, bring awareness. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Dumcraig?
Yeah, I think if Dan and I had the answer for this, we'd be running for president, not supervisor, right? But listen, as a teacher, I've been workshopped to death with all this stuff, right? And determining who these people are, the shooters, is the challenge. We know they're usually, young white males. It's just the way it is. It's fact. We need to figure out why they're doing this. Lots of people blame TV, lots of blame media. I'm not buying that completely. Mental health, yes, there's mental health issues. We're also talking easy access to weapons with people who have mental illness. So we need to take a look at how these kids are getting those guns. I have guns at home. I like guns, but how do you keep that kid from getting that gun? That's the challenge that we have to have. And that's a serious conversation. Nothing's ever going to change until we have that conversation. And when people are ready for it, then we'll have to find the answer.
Thank you. I'm going to get some questions from the audience here to pose to you. Thank you to our panelists for your participation and for sticking around for segment 2. Okay. And Mr. Dumcraig, this will go to you first. What is your plan to improve the quality of the secondary roads in the county? Ida County has much nicer roads.
So I grew up on a gravel road. It used to be called Rural Route 1. Now it's called Spruce Avenue. I don't know how anybody found it on Rural Route 1 because everything was Rural Route 1. I know that if it's mismaintained one time, it will completely, it's gone, right? The maintainer goes too fast, it has grades in it, you bounce up and down. Kids love it. Farmers, adults, not so much, right? So we need a sustained effort to fix the roads, right? We're going to throw $10 million on it, which is a good start, but it needs to be maintained. These roads are the lifeblood of the rural community. They take crops to, take it to market, right? Take the pigs to market. It's essential. And I think that if maybe we need to have a system that would allow us to report roads a little bit more efficiently if they're having problems. I know we have great maintaining services in the county, but perhaps more training if that's available to folks to make sure that we have, and maybe we need more people working on those roads out there so that they have access to. My time's up, but thank you.
Mr. Bittinger.
Right, yeah, I've heard that a lot in the meetings, about the secondary roads. I would say, once again, the fix is right. Try to find more revenue to buy more supplies, have more employees to be able to go out and work on the roads. I do know that the bridges that have been repaired, needing repair is coming down in the county. They're fixing more and more bridges, which links some of our secondary roads where farmers are using, and all that. But I would just say the goal is, be able to find revenue, find ways to save more money to be able to buy more supplies of gravel, and have more employees that go out. I don't know if there's a true easy, but I do know, they, like Jeremy said, they have already applied $10 million towards that. It's a start. It's getting there, but that's what I would do.
And I'm going to break our pattern here because this is directed specifically to you, Mr. Dumkrieger. It asks, have you been able to attend any of the county supervisor meetings?
I do actually. I watch them all on YouTube. I don't go in person just because I don't want to pay for parking because I'm cheap that way. I do watch them. I don't go there. I figured someone would wonder about that. But I do watch them. It's and then that way I can watch them a little bit later too when I'm getting finished with school. But yeah, I watch them.
And I know, Mr. Bittinger, you already told us that you have attended meetings this last year. Have you been to all the meetings this year? Or?
Not everyone, but majority. I'd say over 80%.
Okay, thank you. And so we'll go to you for this next question then.
Sure.
How does Woodbury County become a destination place to live? What is your vision for an enviable Woodbury County?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. Well, it's a very good question, right? That's the question I've heard watching other political races this year, right? How do you make your county, your city, the place everyone wants to come to? There's a lot of quip answers you could give. I would say I don't have one defined answer. One defined here it is. Once again, for us, I would say it's providing safety for our residents. Other amenities. What amenities do we have? Our parks, our shopping centers, all of that goes with living, raising a family, just enjoying city life, country life. What does that look like? Do we have that? And our businesses coming in, providing places of leisure, places of activity. So I don't have a one defined place for that or defined, here's what I would do. I would just say, once again, one thing, having a county government that has accountability in their finances, is saving money, is transparent, building a good relationship with the people, and the sheriff's department building good relationships as they've been working on. I think that's one way to attract people. And I would start there because that's a very big, broad, thing to do. But,
okay. And
yeah.
Mr. Dumkrieger.
Will you repeat that one more time for me?
How does Woodbury County become a destination place to live? What is your vision for an enviable Woodbury County?
All right. So in my mind, what that means is we want to be better than Des Moines, right? We don't want people if you see a list of great places to live in Iowa, Des Moines is down the list, right? It's us. What I see is a place where families want to come live because their schools are the best in the state, if not even the country. We could do that if we wanted to. I would like to see kids learn technologies of the future, and so that their parents can come in. Hopefully we can get these companies to come in to build some of these technologies of the future, and then we can train the kids right in high school. We could have solar panels on some of the high school facilities, right? Kids learning how to use them, saving money with electricity with schools. These things are possible. Other places are doing this. Whiting, I believe, had a windmill that supplied its electricity for years. I don't know if they still have it or not, but they did. Right? These things are all possible. First-class entertainment, first-class roads, parkways, bike paths, all kinds of things that people want to come here to live. Right? Right now, there's not enough jobs because there's not enough people to get those great jobs. So if we use that infrastructure money that Biden is sending us to fix these county roads and to do these special things, then it will be an enviable place to live, and we will forget about Des Moines.
Okay, this question I know is one that is on many people's minds. How about lowering property taxes to make housing more affordable? Mr. Dumkrieger?
All right, lowering property taxes. So every year, the county supervisors, they'll say, we lower the rates of taxes. But there's this thing called the tax asking fee, which is the budget total that the tax asking fee has to be multiplied by the rate. Now, it's a big shell game again, so that the politicians in town can say they lowered their taxes, but we all know our taxes are going up every year, right? My taxes went up every year since I've had that house, right? While it's good that our houses are increasing in value, it's bad for the bottom line. It's bad for my family's bottom line. So I think that it's just really important to know that more people in town raise the pot a little bit for taxes. If you have a potluck and the more people you invite, the better your spread, right? So we need to invite more people into town to live. We build these houses, affordable housing. People are getting good jobs. Taxes will go down once there are people here making money.
Thank you. Mr. Bittinger.
Yes, will you repeat the question one more time?
It says, how about lowering property taxes to make housing more affordable?
Right. Well, I would disagree with Jeremy. It's not a shell game. The tax asking for property taxes does go through some certain mechanisms, both sides, Democrat and Republican. So I would say if it's a shell game, then it's a shell game with everybody in the basket with that. But to lower property taxes, if you look at the budget, tax revenue from property taxes is $35 million out of the $60 million budget for the county. So yes, we could decrease. You could look at ways to decrease, yes, your property tax value or the rate at which it's being taxed. But that would also lower income for the county. So then we have to say, okay, what are other mechanisms? Well, all governments, county, state, national, the only way we get money is through taxation. So it has to come tax from somewhere. So where's that tax going to come from is what I would offer others. Now, I'm not for taxes, more taxes on my house, but the valuations are going up on the houses, which some would say that's a great thing, but yes, that does raise your tax level. And so it's a little more complicated. I wouldn't say it's a shell game. I think it's more nuanced and some more things we'd have to work at. There could be ways to lower that, but once again, we have to look at other ways of bringing that other tax revenue into the county if we're going to lower that.
Thank you. And this goes back a little bit to our opening statements. Why do you believe you are qualified to oversee the county's affairs? So that would include the watching the personnel, the budgets, the maintenance, all those things that we have talked about. What makes you qualified to do all of those things?
Starting with me?
Yep.
Okay, I want to make sure. Well, I would say in all my positions, working at the university, managing a restaurant and a church, I've worked with people. I've led people. I've had to make leadership decisions, how to fire people, hire people, how to work with lawyers, work with the local police. And so all my experience has been interacting with people. My current role as a pastor is to make sure the community is thriving, making sure those that are living in their families, their work, making sure whatever they're experiencing, I'm walking alongside of them and making sure that they can thrive and live and grow. And so as lead in the county, my job is to be a steward. My job is to pass on to the next generation a healthier county. A county that's more financially stable, more money in the bank. Are we making better choices long-term for the grandkids and the great-grandkids to be able to have a healthy county government? And so out of my experiences working with law enforcement, working with the Judicial Affairs Board at the university, I've had to deal with policy making. And so that's what I would say would qualify me. I also love this. I love serving and just love Woodbury County. Love the people here. They're very good people all around. And just want to make sure that we have a government that's reflective of the people. So.
Thank you. Mr. Dumkrieger.
That was really good. Listen, I am all about transparency. I'm honest. I'm going to tell the truth when I see something going wrong. I am qualified for this position because I have a breadth of life experience that leads me to understand many people in this community, what they're going through. It gives me an understanding of how things work at the human level and what needs to be done. I understand that there's a financial factor to all these things. But at the end of the day, it comes down to a bottom line with money, right? But there's also a people factor. And if people aren't put first before politics, before any of that stuff, then the community doesn't matter because the people from the government won't matter because they're not being taken care of, right? They're not being allowed to take care of themselves. We need to give them the best apparatus for them to function in our community. And I am that person.
Thank you. What are the most important functions of the Board of Supervisors? Mr. Dumkrieger?
Well, obviously budget would be one of them. Setting that budget to make sure that it's, right now the budget for the county is $84 million and some odd hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? I think that's a function. We also worry about the roads. Of course, I'm worried about the mental health aspect of all this. Of course, the state, we know, took over the budget for that, which was nice of them, I guess, but I'm sure as time will tell, that would probably be a bad thing as well, just because they will tell us what to do and how to do it, and we know their track record with that kind of thing. So I think that those things, the budget, the mental health facilities, Siouxland Siouxland Mental Health, all that, are the most important functions of that.
Thank you. Mr. Bittinger?
Sure. I would say three things. It's the budget management. If you look at the supervisor's role as described in our county, what is printed out, it's the budgetary oversight, handling any decisions or governance policies that bubble up from the appointed officials that the supervisors appoint, and then it's representing the county on county boards and other committees. And so I would say those three things are what we should be focusing on. A lot of people want to say, the supervisors, you've got to get it out into the weeds. You've got to get into everything. And yes, we need to be out there. We represent the county, and there's a lot of things that need to be looked at. But realistically, the budget is the biggest aspect of the supervisor's role. And so I would say those are the three things: overseeing the budget, making sure it's accurate, making sure it's appropriated right, making sure there's transparency, making sure that we're following the rules federally and locally here and statewide, and then making sure that we are handling any governance and policy issues and making sure that things are more transparent, making sure that there's less red tape in the government, less I would say employee and citizen indignation at our county government for their policies or not understanding what's going on. And so,
Okay. This question asks, do you believe minimum wage is high enough? And I'd like to add to that, we have commented about the fact that we share borders with South Dakota and Nebraska,
Right.
and so we have to compete against them. And we also know that minimum wage is controlled by the state. So if you think there needs to be a change, how would you affect that? So, Mr. Bittinger, we'll start with you.
well, there's a lot of debate about that, right? If you pay a higher wage, then people have higher income to take care of their family and all that. But a lot of times corresponding with higher wages or minimum wage, also goods and services go up. A lot of times that cost is passed on to the consumer, which is the reality of all businesses, whether no matter the party affiliation you're with, it happens by business owners that pass that on. I think it'd be great for people to make more money, but I don't know how I would address that. Or specifically what I would do in that. So I'm not going to make a rash comment or a promise or say this is what I'm going to do or would try to strive for. So, but I do agree, right? People should make more money. I do agree that they're worth their wage. I think it should be merit-based. Yeah.
And Mr. Dumkrieger.
Well, everybody deserves to have a fair living wage that they can earn money and live on. Otherwise, it's being subsidized by the government anyway. Several years ago, we tried to have the county supervisors raise the minimum wage, and it was, of course, shut down by Kim Reynolds. I think what we're seeing is the market is kind of correcting a little bit of that right now, because I know lots of different businesses are increasing their wages because they can't find people to work, so they have to compete with them, which is also raising, contributing to inflation a little bit. When I try to raise the minimum wage, I think it's ridiculous. I think there's probably someone out there right now who is making minimum wage who's being taken advantage of, that probably doesn't know they could do something else. I don't know. I hope that that's not the case, that people aren't taking advantage right now. $7.25 an hour. It was hard to live on that when I was young. I can't imagine what it's like now. The state has to raise it. I can't do it if I'm elected supervisor. I would certainly encourage the state to do it, and the federal government.
Okay, thank you. That's going to conclude this portion. I apologize for any of you whose questions I was not able to ask. I did try to hit them all. But we're going to give you each a minute to give closing statements, any last thoughts that you want to leave us with. And Mr. Dumkrieger, we will start with you.
Sure, thank you, Corey. Once again, thank you for the opportunity to speak in this forum. I hope I probably did mumble like an idiot, like my wife says all the time. But we have some serious issues, and we need someone serious with the courage to look and just say no, right? I'm not going to be a rubber stamp for this. I'm tired of being told we can't do things by people who are just not willing to try different things, new creative ways of trying things. I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to fight for your family. I'm going to make sure you have the things that you need so that you can have your kids go to school, so that you can go to work on time, and come home to them safely, right? If I let you down, if I let your family down, then I'm going to let my family down. And I do not let my family down. That's the one thing I guarantee. And if you have any questions further, you can ask me after this event, or you can email me at jdumkrieger@yahoo.com. You can find me Dumkrieger at dumkriegerforiowa.com, or you can give me a call. Just talk to me. You can chew me out about anything. I can take it. I have thick skin. Okay. I am asking for your vote on November 8th. In the meantime, just holler if you need something. That phone number is 712-581-0566. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bittinger.
Sure. I want to say I agree with Jeremy. Thank you guys for letting us be here. Thank you for great questions from the audience and from the panelists here. I want to start off, Woodbury County is a great county. A lot of times we look at government with negative eyes or negative views, always looking for the bad. Abraham Lincoln said, when you look for the bad in someone, you always will find it. You always will see it. But Woodbury County is a great county. We've got great employees. We've got great elected officials, appointed officials. We have a great sheriff's department and some good things going. There are some things we need to look at and address and keep building for future development and good things. But I want to just end with, I love Woodbury County. I've seen the good in it, and I want to help continue to build on the good foundation that's been before me. Three things I'll end with is just who I am is just principled, practical, and patriotic. Principled, I stand on a firm foundation of beliefs and values and understanding of our Constitution and our founding documents. Practical, I'm going to be asking myself, is what I'm doing as a supervisor creating less or more government red tape for our citizens? And then lastly, patriotic. I'm thankful for Woodbury and our country, and I'm thankful to be able to serve. And I look forward to serving and getting your vote to serve as a Woodbury County supervisor. And as always, you can go to Facebook to see for any more information about my campaign and what I believe. And I just want to say thank you very much for having us.
Thank you both for being here. Let's give a round of applause to our
Good, man.
candidates. Thank you for running and for your willingness to serve. We will now take a short break so that we can bring in the county attorney candidates. And so I ask you all to stand by. We'll be back in about 5-10 minutes. Thanks. Welcome back. Our break is now concluded. We now have for our second segment the candidates for county attorney, James Loomis, Republican, and P.J. Jennings, Democrat. So thank you, gentlemen, both for being here tonight.
Thank you for having us.
We'll let you both start with an opening statement. We'll give you 90 seconds for that, and then we'll go to questions from our panelists. So, Mr. Loomis, would you like to start?
Sure. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I first want to thank the Sioux City League of Women Voters for hosting and allowing me the opportunity to speak. I also like to thank the panelists for being here tonight. Good evening, everyone. My name is James Loomis, and just to give you a little bit of information or tell you a little bit about myself, I am married. My wife and I are having our anniversary, our 11th year anniversary, coming up here in just a few days. We live on an acreage just outside of Bronson. We have 5 children, ages 8 to 1, and I've been fortunate and blessed to have a wonderful family growing up. I grew up on a farm outside of Winterset, Iowa, and so family and agriculture is what I know and what I do. And I went to the University of Iowa State, or Iowa State University, and graduated there. Then from there, I went to the University of Iowa College of Law and graduated in 2003. And since that time, I've been a prosecutor here in the Woodbury County Attorney's Office.
Thank you. And Mr. Jennings?
Thank you. I also want to thank the League of Women Voters for inviting us here. And I would just want to start off by giving James Loomis a handshake just to let folks know we work together. We worked together for quite a long time. We're friends. At least we're friendly in the office. We don't hang out together. But this isn't one of those races. And I just want to preface it that if there's any questions that comes that want me to portray James in a negative light, I'm just not going to go down that road. But saying that, I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, moved to Sioux City, Iowa in 1987. I'm also married, been married for 33 years, I believe, this year. My wife's out there in the audience. I believe it's 33 years. We also have 3 grown children. Our oldest has blessed us with our first grandchild who turned 4 this summer. And they are just announced a few weeks ago that we will be having our second grandchild. I attended Wayne State College over in Nebraska and went to law school at the University of South Dakota, graduating in 1999, and have been primarily at the county attorney's office ever since then.
All right, thank you. We'll now turn to our panelists. They will be each asking you a question. You'll both have an opportunity to answer, and we'll give you 60 seconds for each response. So, Bernie, you want to start us off?
Sure. First of all, good evening, and thank you for being here. Happy anniversary. Early.
Thank you.
My question to you, and not in a negative way either, but what sets you apart from your opponent? And why should voters choose you over your opponent?
I'll begin. I believe the primary difference, and it should be obvious, I've held this position for 16 years now. Been successful, I believe, for 16 years. I talk to the community members. Most of those have great things to say about myself, but more importantly about the office and what the office has accomplished. That's where I focus most of my energy when I go to work every day, is making sure folks like James Loomis and the rest of the assistant prosecutors are successful. When I took this job, one of the first things that I told folks was that I can't be successful unless those guys are successful. So I've committed myself to the last 16 years of trying to make those guys successful and promote what they do. And I believe that's why the community should choose me. And I don't necessarily like to use the words over Mr. Loomis, but choose me instead of Mr. Loomis, because I've just been successful in this job and I'm proven as a leader of the county attorney's office. Thank you.
And Mr. Loomis?
Thank you. I think what sets me apart, well, first of all, I preface my statements too, is that I'm not here to say anything negative about PJ. That's not why I'm here, and that's not why I'm running. I think what sets me apart in this particular race is my focus, and what my focus has always been as a prosecutor, is the element of service. What we do in the county attorney's office is that we are tasked with serving. We serve people. And how do you serve people best? That's really what my goal is, and how do we serve people better? And I think that my focus is going to be on serving the entire county, all of Woodbury County, not just Sioux City, but all the communities here. And that will be my focus, and that's what my platform has been, that I can further explain later as we go through this process. But what sets me apart is my vision for the office and how I want the office to serve all of Woodbury County not just Sioux City.
Thank you. And Woody?
Thank you, and again, thanks to both of you for being here tonight. I see at least the major felony court docket every week, and it's a pretty robust docket. And knowing that there are budget constraints, do you feel the department is staffed adequately for the caseload that you have? I don't know how many individual cases each attorney has, whether it's misdemeanor or major felony or whatever the case is, but what are your thoughts on the staffing, and do you have enough people working in the department to adequately prosecute all the cases?
Mr. Loomis?
Thank you for the question, Woody. I would say that currently we are down a couple attorneys in the office, and so that does make it a challenge, but everyone is pulled together to cover everything that needs to be covered. I do believe that when we are fully staffed and have all the attorneys in the office, that we are capable of handling everything that comes across our desks and prosecuting them and handling those cases. So I do believe that once our office is fully staffed, that we are capable and able to handle those cases that come across our desk.
And Mr. Jennings?
Thank you. Thank you again, Woody. I also agree that we're fully staffed, but I think with the climate in the office, we need to add an attorney. And there's a few areas that I'd like to speak about. One of those areas primarily being on the mental health side. We handle those cases on behalf of the county for mental health and substance abuse. Those cases have skyrocketed, in my opinion, since I've started in that office. We just have the one civil attorney handling those cases, and then there's an attorney that assists that assistant prosecutor, but we need to address that issue. I think we desperately need a second attorney in that office. The other place that I want to focus on and that I will focus my attention on in the next term after I'm elected is I believe we need to have an investigator in the office. We work tremendously with law enforcement, both the police department and the sheriff's office, and they handle most of the workload for us on the investigative side. But I think with the complexity of the cases that we're handling today, I think we need to have that investigator so we have someone directly in the office that can go outside and do the things that we're asking them to do.
And Ms. Erber?
Thank you. So working in news in my field, right, transparency is a big thing. I know both of you have in the past mentioned that transparency is important to you as well in this job. And a lot of what goes on in the court system or with attorneys, prosecutors, defense teams is kind of a mystery to the general public unless they are involved in their own case. What would you do to maybe increase transparency? Do you think it's important? Maybe just speak on that topic for your voters.
Okay. Thank you for the question. I think transparency is important, and I try to speak to the community as much as possible. One of the negatives that I've heard is I haven't gotten out there in the county as often as I should, and I take that on. I don't have any issues with that. I have gone out in the county when the Board of Supervisors have gone out there, and I've attended most of those sessions, and that's voluntarily. We don't have to do that, but I've done that. One of the caveats, though, is most of the cases that we're working on, we're prohibited from discussing those cases. So a lot of times when we get into some of those discussions, we get somebody who wants to ask us specific questions about what's going on in a particular case, and we just can't do that. And so I try to shy away from some of that stuff. But I have no issues with talking to the community about what we're doing, what we're trying to do, how we're trying to advance certain issues and subjects. And so I'm totally open with being transparent.
Thank you. Mr. Loomis?
Thank you. Transparency is a buzzword that people like to use a lot, and first of all, PJ's right. The cases that we handle, while they're active cases, those are things that we can't discuss, obviously for reasons that we're trying to prosecute the case. But I think it's a general matter, it's a general principle, and what I've talked about from the beginning of my campaign are three things: engagement, communication, and partnership. You have to have those three things in order to serve. And when you do those three things, what you do is you open those lines of communication. And you open those lines of communication across the county, that you're engaged with them, that you communicate with them, that you partner with them, so that you are ultimately serving and keeping our communities safer by doing that and keeping those lines of communication open. And if that's what you mean by transparency, I agree with that we want to serve all of Woodbury County and keep those lines of communication open. And you only do that by actually being out there And that's what I've done during the course of this campaign. I've been to every community in Woodbury County.
Thank you. Mr. Gutierrez?
So going back to the mental health issues, they are on the rise, and it's a big issue that is concerning many of the students, not just here at WIT, but everywhere around the county. So we were curious about what resources are available and what we can do to expand them.
Mr. Loomis?
Thank you for the question. I think largely that's best addressed, obviously, by the legislator and the legislative bodies, both at the county level and the state level, because they're the ones that obviously decide what funding goes where and how that funding is spent. But I think as a practical matter, when it comes to how we prosecute cases and handle those kinds of cases, what you need to do is you need to make sure that you're looking at those issues and how to handle and address those issues with people that are dealing with mental health problems, and how best to prosecute them in that fashion, so that you're also making them accountable and holding them accountable, and keeping our communities safe at the same time, but also addressing those issues that you raise. So it's a balance there, and finding that balance is something that you have to do every day as a prosecutor.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Jennings.
Thank you as well. And when I approach mental health, it's not from a prosecutorial standpoint. I would like to address that, and I would like the county to step up to address those issues before we get them into the system. Everybody agrees that the jails and the prisons aren't a place for people with mental health. And we know from studies and data that shows us mental health is what's driving most of those crimes that those people commit. So if we can abrogate that before they come to us within the prosecutorial system, that helps the whole community out. It not only saves taxpayers dollars, it saves jail space for the real criminals out there, and it helps our office as well, because we feel like we want to contribute and help those folks with the mental health. And so I communicate with people within the mental health society right now, with mental health community. We're trying to do some of those prosecutorial things with seeking treatment. But what I would like, when you ask the question, what can the community do? The community needs to step up and tell the Board of Supervisors this is an important issue, and we can't penny pinch in this segment of what we do within our office. We got to step up and spend some of those dollars, because it's ultimately going to save the county money.
Thank you. Ms. Scalero.
Mr. Jennings, earlier you started mentioning substance abuse issues or cases. Prosecutors in some areas have decided not to prosecute small amounts of marijuana. How much do you prioritize enforcing marijuana laws?
The possession of marijuana is illegal, state of Iowa. We prosecute possession of marijuana cases. We try to help those folks obtain the help that they may need if they have substance abuse issues. But there's no question as to whether or not we're not going to prosecute those cases, that kind of thing. It's a crime, and we're going to prosecute those cases. A lot of the things that some of those folks talk about when it's just a possession case is that there may have been a larger issue behind just that possession. So they may not necessarily see that. But when it comes to just the possession issue, one thing that I do agree with, though, is that just the simple possession of marijuana probably shouldn't be an arrestable offense. It should maybe be a citation issued, fine, that kind of thing. But arresting someone for just a simple possession of marijuana probably shouldn't be something that you arrest somebody and take them to jail on.
Mr. Loomis.
Thank you. Possession of marijuana is a crime. Our office should prosecute it, like PJ said, and handle those cases because they're important. I think what people don't realize is that while you can classify it as simple possession of marijuana, those simple possession of marijuana cases ultimately turn into other cases. People driving under the influence of marijuana, people using marijuana and committing other crimes. Use of marijuana leads to use of other drugs, in my experience. What you see is people start using marijuana, and that leads to use of other drugs. And so I think it is important to prosecute those cases, and I do think it's a case where you should make those arrests. I don't believe that a citation is appropriate in those cases. I believe that we should be arresting possession of marijuana because it's a crime.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gottberg.
Thanks. When there's an arrest and a case is presented to you, a lot of it is also going to depend on what kind of evidence is presented to you to decide, is there a case here? And without making it too long-winded of a question, do you feel that your office has the best relationship it can with police and sheriff? And is there kind of back and forth about what you need to go forward to prosecute a case? And is there enough training both ways as far as what should happen during an arrest to make it a prosecutable case? I guess the short version is, do you think the relationship's good with the police and sheriff's department, or are there things you can do to improve that as far as getting successful prosecutions?
Mr. Loomis.
Thank you, Woody. It's a good question. That needs to improve. And I say that because it's been my platform from the beginning of my campaign. Engagement, communication, and partnership with law enforcement first and foremost, and with community leaders second of all. And prosecutions are best made when you have best possible engagement with law enforcement. And that's what I've been doing over my career as a prosecutor. You communicate daily with them, you work daily with them, you build that trust with them so that you have the best investigations possible, so that you have the best chance moving forward with that prosecution. And that's why I'm proud to have the public endorsement of 105 officers here in Woodbury County, active and retired, that believe that I'm the best person to lead the office, the county attorney's office, because I've been doing that. I've engaged with them, I've worked with them, and they trust me to handle those situations moving forward so that when a case comes across your desk, you can move forward.
Thank you. Mr. Jennings.
Yes, thank you also, Woody. I've always engaged with law enforcement. That was one of the things that I heard when I first took this position, was there was a conflict or a wall between law enforcement and our office. I worked on that. I held monthly meetings. I held meetings every 6 months with law enforcement just to build that relationship back up to where I believe it is an established relationship. I talk basically daily with law enforcement, both the Sioux City PD as well as the Sheriff's Office. I think I have a tremendous relationship where they can come to me with any issues. If they're having an issue with one of the assistant prosecutors, they know that they can come to me to work things out. We work, we solve cases, and I believe the headlines within all news media proved that we worked tremendously together with solving some of these major crimes. And I believe we convicted most all the major crimes that we've had on our docket from both the Sioux City PD standpoint as well as Sheriff's Department standpoint.
Thank you. Ms. Erber?
Thank you. We are lucky to, I think a lot of people who live here would agree, to live in a community that is generally seen as safe, right? So we don't necessarily have some of the crimes that are in other cities, maybe bigger cities. But what do you think is the number one thing you'd like to tackle your office? What are you seeing the most here for crime in Woodbury County? You did mention there's been an uptick in certain kinds of cases. Is that the number one case here?
I can't necessarily speak to what the number one crime is, but I can speak to what my priorities are. Child sexual assault cases are a priority for me. Domestic violence cases are a priority for me. So I've always focused on some of those, going to trainings, doing some of those cases, and handling those cases primarily by myself. When I joined the felony division, I asked Tom Mullen, who was the county attorney at the time, if I could maintain those felony level domestic cases, and he agreed to do that. And I still, actually, part of why I was kind of late tonight is I have a trial coming up for domestic violence on the 25th. Beyond that, though, those are a few things that I'm hoping to focus on. And again, mental health was one of those things, but we know that opioid abuse is one of the leading factors behind death between our youth, 18 to 45, I believe is what they say. I want to tackle that. I've started talking with various community leaders to try to put together a collaboration to work on that issue. And then within the schools, we got to do something about the schools and the kids and their learning abilities, because we know that if they're doing bad in schools, it's going to translate to crime.
Thank you. Mr. Loomis.
Thank you. My focus is on violent crime. I think the shootings that have taken place that everyone's pretty much aware of throughout the course of this year are something that it's a problem. and it needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed with a firm hand, and it needs to be tackled head on. And that's something that comes through a consistent effort by the county attorney, and it comes through a consistent effort of the prosecutors in the office, and it comes through a consistent effort by maintaining close relationships with law enforcement to build those cases and focus on those violent cases that we need to handle and prosecute so that we are safe when we're out at the grocery store, when we're going to church, when we're going to school. Those are important cases that we need to look at and focus on.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Gutierrez.
So you guys said how like there's a wall between you guys and law enforcement sometimes. I would say that there's also a wall between the citizens and law enforcement here. And so when people are watching their TVs and they see law enforcement shootings on TV, it scares them. So as of here in Woodbury, how can you guys ensure that the country residents could feel safe and could feel like they're treated fairly?
Mr. Loomis, I believe it's to you.
Sure, thank you. That comes through engagement. That comes through communication. That comes through forming partnerships with those in law enforcement and those in the community, so that if they know you and there's a trust relationship and there's a foundation there that you have established, then you can work through those issues and concerns. And that comes through working closely with law enforcement. What can we do to assist with that? What can law enforcement do to assist with that? And once you've built relationships, when you have good relationships, that's when those problems that you've addressed and those issues that you raise, you can work through them without resorting to other ways because you've built that trust there. And so you establish that with a foundation.
Thank you. Mr. Jennings.
Yes, as well. I've been part of that communication, breaking down some of those barriers. Of course, everybody, I'm one of those minority groups that doesn't necessarily trust law enforcement. We had a forum where law enforcement, as myself, I believe it was one of the Unity Community forums, and I encourage, we can't sit back and let somebody else dictate breaking down those barriers. We have to act on that. And I encourage all those minorities that were in attendance as well as those folks that were listening, you need to come to the table. The law enforcement is right here saying they're willing and able to work with you. You got to show up. You just can't sit back and say everything that they're doing is negative and what they're doing is wrong. You just can't do that. If you want the system to improve, you got to actively participate in the system. And so those are some of the things that I've done, going out and speaking to communities. And I tell them, when I talk to students, I tell them all the time, one of the things I tell them anyway is, don't sit back and wait for somebody to give you anything. You have to work for it. You have to earn it. And when you do those types of things, you appreciate it more.
Thank you. And back to you, Ms. Scalero.
Still with the theme of law enforcement, the Woodbury County Sheriff this past spring, hosted a constitutional attorney speaking for We the People for constitutional sheriffs, and objections were raised by members of the public. Do you feel that this was an appropriate program, and did you have any concerns, or what concerns, if any, do you have?
From my perspective, I didn't listen to it. I didn't know what they were speaking about. I talked to the sheriff about it. I trusted what he told me about that forum. There wasn't anything, no ill will or no ill intent for bringing that speaker behind it. I like the sheriff. We worked tremendously together since he's been the sheriff, and so I trust what he told me about why he brought that speaker. That speaker specifically, after the fact, I looked online, some of the things that she might say, I don't necessarily agree with, but that sheriff is an elected official. He chose to bring him. The people are the ones that need to tell him whether it was right or wrong. It's not my position to tell him that.
And Mr. Loomis.
Yes, thank you very much. I had an opportunity to go and listen to the speaker, and I didn't have any problem with what the speaker had to say. She was here to educate people, and to educate people about the Constitution and the role of law enforcement within the Constitution, and the interplay between those two. And the sheriff was within his right to do so. And I too trust the sheriff. I have the sheriff's endorsement for county attorney. And so when he brings in those speakers. He brought that speaker in for educational reasons, whether you agree or disagree with her. It was an opportunity for everyone to sit and listen and debate. There's nothing wrong with a good debate. There's nothing wrong with an exchange of ideas, and that's why she was here. And so I think it was a good thing for the sheriff to bring her.
Thank you. Mr. Gottberg.
Thanks. Well, it's easy for people to armchair quarterback what you do, kind of like it is they armchair quarterback what the media does too. One of the topics that I get asked about, I don't know if it's more frequently because I'm media corps coordinator or not, but people question me sometimes as why was this case plea bargained, or why didn't they go for a more of a hard penalty against whoever the particular felon is. Is there a simple explanation to the public as far as why some cases are plea bargained and others aren't? I'm sure you probably hear that. Each of you hear that too.
Mr. Loomis.
Thanks for the question, Woody. It is something that comes up, and there's a lot of factors that go into that, and how plea agreements are handled and how cases are resolved. And there are times, in my opinion, when plea agreements shouldn't be made because of what the case is, the nature of the case, and the impact that case has on the community. Now, with that being said, how plea agreements are reached and the decisions that are made, the factors that go into that are numerous. One is the evidence that's available. How strong is the case? That certainly plays a role in those decisions and how that decision gets made. Working with the victims and the victims' families plays a role in how those decisions are made. You don't want to push a case to trial and harm a child abuse victim if that's going to do more harm to the child than good. And so you've got to balance all of those things when you're making those decisions. And another factor is you look at a criminal's their history and how that comes into play. All of those things are factors in the decisions that get made about plea agreements and what that plea agreement should be.
Thank you. Mr. Jennings.
Yes. Woody, I guess I would start with what is justice. Anytime I approach a case, whether I'm looking at plea agreement or whether I'm looking at going to trial, I'm looking at what is justice. And I've impressed upon the sisters attorneys to start there. We have to start with what is justice. And then you bring in all those factors that Mr. Loomis talked about, James. And I'll give you a prime example. I had a case involving a female victim, rape victim. And it took years, and DNA came back finally, and it picked out the perpetrator. Went back to the victim. The victim didn't want to participate. She's older now, didn't want to go through the system. I will never force a sexual abuse victim to go through the case, but I asked her, I believe that justice means that this person needs to go to prison. Will you hang in there with me, and we will get through this? And through that communication with that victim, she agreed to do that, and we reached a plea agreement, and that perpetrator went back to prison. The victim was satisfied. We got justice out the case, and the community was safer.
Thank you. Ms. Erber?
I'd like to give you both the opportunity, kind of a two-part question here, to kind of brag about something that you're proud of, that you've been able to do in the job, maybe give voters something specific to associate with you. And then, the second part of that is, what is one thing that you could tell voters, kind of a promise that you would give them if you were to get the job again or to get the job?
Mr. Jennings?
Thank you. One of the things that I'm very proud of is our Fine Collections Division. We didn't have that when I took over this position, and we studied other counties. We went to Black Hawk County and Potawatomi County, some of those other counties that had it, and researched the feasibility, the benefit to the community, and through all those discussions, we established it. And it helps tremendously. It helps the folks who owe those fines, who committed crimes, that want to drive. It gets them legally the ability to drive, gets their license, registration. It supports the community. Those funds, we get a portion of that money that's collected, and it goes back into the county coffers. So it's helped everybody. And of course, it lessens the crime on the law enforcement side. So I'm very proud about that. But I'm also proud of all the other things that we've established family and treatment courts since I've been county attorney to help those mothers with those children. We've established the Veterans Treatment Court to help those individuals committed crimes that are veterans. So there's many things that established and have accomplished since I've been county attorney, and I'm most proud of some of those things.
Thank you. Mr. Loomis.
I am most proud of the fact that over these years, as an assistant county attorney, as a prosecutor, I've developed relationships with officers. And I've worked closely with really good people all across the board in law enforcement. And they trust me enough to give me their endorsement. And so I am proud of what I do as a prosecutor because I think we do good work. And I am proud of what law enforcement does because they do good work. They make mistakes, as we all do, but they do good work. And I'm proud of the endorsements that I have. I have over 100 endorsements, and that's something that I'm proud of because that means that over the years that I've been a prosecutor, I've built that trust and relationship for them to come out and support me. So that is something that I'm proud of. My promise, if elected as county attorney, and when I'm county attorney, is I'm going to work hard. I've worked hard in this campaign every day, and I'm going to show up on January 1st as county attorney, and I'm going to work hard, and I'm going to implement those changes I want to make.
Thank you. And our last question from the panel, Mr. Gutierrez.
So people of color are arguably, prosecuted for crimes that white people are not. What could we do to ensure that people are treated equally in general?
Mr. Loomis?
In my experience, and what I do as a prosecutor every day, is it doesn't matter what your race is, it doesn't matter what your religion is, it doesn't matter what your background is. I don't look at that, and I never do. I don't know what anyone's race is or their religion when I prosecute a case. That's not how I do this job, and that's not how I would ever do this job. I'm going to hold people accountable for the crimes that they commit, regardless of what their race is or their background or their religion. To me, that's not an issue. How do you address it? What you do to address those issues is that you make sure that you're handling cases the same way, right? When a case comes across your desk, are you treating people the same way? Are you evaluating the same factors? And I do that because I don't know what race somebody is until I see them in the courtroom, so it never comes into play with me.
Thank you. Mr. Jennings?
Yes, and I totally appreciate that question. An internal promise to myself when I took this job was one of my primary objectives was to make sure that everybody that comes to our office feels that they've been treated fairly, whether we send them to prison, whether we send them to jail, whether we give them a second opportunity, whatever the case might be, they feel like they've been treated fairly. I've promoted assistant prosecutors based in large part on that. One of the heated discussions that I've had, or one of the animated discussions, was I felt that there was an attorney that didn't treat somebody fairly based on race or income. We had a heated discussion. Thankfully, I only had one of those discussions. I love the prosecutors in my office because of what Mr. Loomis has stated, James. We treat people fairly. We're not looking at color. We're not looking at wealth. We're not looking at race. When you come to our office, we get the facts. Can we prove those facts beyond a reasonable doubt? That's the only thing that we're weighing. I had people come after me that I've sent to prison. Thank you, Mr. Jennings. Sending me to prison was the best thing that could have happened to me at that time. I appreciate that. They know that I treated them fairly, and it wasn't about anything that involved race, wealth, or anything like that.
Thank you. We're going to turn now to some questions from our audience. The two that I already had, you've already answered for the most part, but there is a follow-up on the plea deals that you answered earlier. Can you tell us what percentage of your cases end up being pleaded out?
I would start. I've never taken an exact percentage. I can only tell you what the data tells us, and this is across the board, across the nation, whether you're working in state court or the Fed court system, that 85 to 95% of all cases are plea bargains. One thing that I do stress, and one thing that I have paid attention to, is that we're plea bargaining for the right reasons. Again, it goes back to justice. I had a discussion with an individual, I believe, that came up from Black Hawk County, and he had a concern that prosecutors there were plea bargaining cases because it was the quick and easy thing to do, and they didn't care one sentence about whether that person was actually guilty or not. We don't do that here in Woodbury County. And I can assure the community that's not what's happening. And again, I will start and I will end with what is justice. And if we're justified by that plea bargain, then I'm okay with it. Like Mr. Loomis says, there may not be a case that you can plea bargain. That's okay. Somebody needs to go to jail sometimes. But if justice serves us by plea bargaining, that's what we're going to do.
And Mr. Loomis.
Plea bargains are a part of what we do. And I don't know what the percentage is, and I couldn't give you one. What I can tell you is that there are times when I don't believe that plea bargains are appropriate. You either take responsibility for what you did or you go to trial. And I'm not afraid of going to trial. I've done it a lot, and I'll keep doing it. That's just the way that I feel, that there are certain cases that it doesn't happen. But there are those cases where it is appropriate to do so for those factors that I mentioned before. And at the end of the day, as mentioned by PJ, justice is what we're looking for, taking into account all of those factors.
All right. And to Mr. Loomis then for this next one, should the county attorney position be more administrative or prosecutorial in nature?
The county attorney is expected to lead an office of prosecutors. You can't lead an office if you don't do what you're supposed to be doing, right? So the prosecutor, the chief prosecutor, should be prosecuting cases. Yes, you're an administrator of an office, but you should be prosecuting cases. The voters expect their county attorney to prosecute cases. They expect their county attorney to go to trial. And to me, that's fair, and that's a simple request. And I don't make any bones about it that I'm a trial attorney and I go to trial. And I will continue to do that as county attorney, and that will not change. I will just have the added responsibilities as an administrator as well as a prosecutor. But people expect your county attorney to prosecute cases and be in the courtroom, and I will do that. Thank you. Mr. Jennings.
Totally agree with what James just said, and I've done that since day one. I've always handled cases. When we had attorneys in the felony division say they go on maternity leave, we passed some of those cases, but I, by and large, take that docket. Because, again, like he said, I like to lead by example. If I'm stressing to my assistants that they need to work hard and get the job done, I need to show them that that's what I'm doing. And I came into the office. I stressed to some of the newer attorneys, I tried a case or co-chaired a case in the first week that I was in the office. I started on Monday and I was in a trial on Friday. I'm one of the first attorneys there in the morning. I'm one of the last attorneys to leave. There are a few attorneys in the office that can say they're there on the weekends more than I am. And again, it's because I lead by example. So if I'm stressing upon my assistants that they need to work hard and put in extra hours, I need to show them that I'm willing to do that as well. And I take cases to court. I've always done that, and I will continue to do that. Like I said, I have a case coming up on October 25th for domestic violence because I believe it should go to court, and that's what we're going to do.
All right. With regards to juveniles that are entering the system at a younger age and committing more violent crimes, coupled with staggering mental health needs, what can we expect from you to address these issues? Have you seen... Oh, okay, that's a separate question. I'll ask that later. Mr. Jennings.
Thank you. Again, it goes back, and I believe I stressed it early on. We have to break down some of those barriers to what we're doing with these kids. We have to get in the schools. We have to get in the schools early. One of the setbacks or drawbacks to the system that we're in or that we're a part of is we can't get involved until they've committed a crime. We need to do that before then, and it starts at preschool. It starts with the family. It starts with making communication channels with those parents. Early education, all those types of things. We need to stress that before the kid comes to see us. I just had a conversation with one of our community leaders that I'm hoping to build some bridges with the opioid monies that we're going to be getting. It has to be multifaceted. There has to be an educational component. There has to be a job component, and there has to be that treatment component. And the community has to support all those types of things that make our community successful, as well as making that individual successful. These juveniles, it starts there. We got to address them early on, because by the time they get to high school, if we haven't addressed them by that point, in my opinion, it's too late.
Thank you. Mr. Loomis.
It does start with a family. Children who commit crimes as juveniles and the upbringing that they've had, you can usually trace that back to their family life. And you can get into a debate all night long about how to fix the family, but that's not the question. The best way to address it is that once those juveniles commit adult crimes, we should treat them like adults. And they should be prosecuted like adults if they're in adult court. And you're going to take into account mental health, you're going to take into account their criminal history, you're going to take into account what they did. But to me, that doesn't change the fact that you're going to hold those young people accountable. If you commit crimes as a juvenile, and those are adult crimes, and you end up in adult court, you're going to get treated like an adult. And that's how I feel about every juvenile case that comes across my desk.
Thank you. Mr. Loomis, would you pursue the death penalty if its use was reinstated here in Iowa?
Yes. There are certain crimes that deserving of death, and we don't have it in Iowa. But in my opinion, those crimes are murder, certain sex abuse crimes that are deserving of death, in my opinion. And if it were instituted and the legislature passed it, and I'm county attorney, and those cases are appropriate, I would push for the death penalty.
Mr. Jennings.
The death penalty as a proposition, I'm not necessarily against. I'm against, however, the implementation of the death penalty. Everyone knows that the low-income minority groups are the ones that get the death penalty the most often, and that's a fact. So for those reasons, I'm against the implementation of the death penalty. If death penalty was issued equally across the board, I probably wouldn't have any disfavor towards it at all. But that's just not the way it works in our society. And for those reasons, I don't want to see the death penalty come back. I believe the system works the way it is. And again, it goes back to, we can't always rely on prosecution and putting people in jails and putting them in prison. We have to act before that. We have to be proactive. There isn't enough money in the world to build enough jails and prisons for everybody if all we did was relied on prosecuting them for crimes. We have to be proactive.
Thank you. All right, now I'll go back to the question I started to read on the back. Have you seen the benefits of the drug court here in Woodbury County? Mr. Jennings?
Yes, I have. There's no doubt, and I've attended some of those drug court meetings. I don't know if James has or not, but I've attended those and I support those folks, and I'm actively trying to solicit folks to be on those panels because I know it works. I've had family members attend some of those drug court panels. I've had family members with tremendous substance abuse issues and have been able to overcome those issues. And in large part, it's been because of people on those panels like drug court. And again, it goes back to establishing the family treatment court. It goes back to establishing those veterans treatment courts. I know it works. One of the sad points that I came across was when the board stopped funding Project Phoenix, which was an in-jail substance abuse treatment program that we had in collaborations with Jackson Recovery Centers at the time. I thought that was a tremendous loss to the community. They chose to cut that funding, but there's no doubt that the treatment programs do work. And you look at any studies, and it will tell you that the money you put in for these treatment programs are by and large way less than the money for committing them to jails and prison.
And Mr. Loomis?
I too believe that the drug court program is a good program and serves a good role in Woodbury County. You just need to make sure that the people that are participating in that program actually want to participate in that program, because it won't serve any benefit for someone if they don't actually want to participate and get themselves the help that they need. So I think that program overall is a good program, and we should continue to use that program as a resource for those in which it's appropriate.
Thank you. And that's all the time we have for questions. I'd like to give you each 1 minute for a closing statement, and Mr. Loomis, we'll start with you.
Thank you so much. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for being here on the panel, and to the League of Women Voters for the opportunity to be here and speak tonight. I am running for county attorney because I want to make changes that will help serve everybody in Woodbury County better. And that's been my focus from the beginning. How do we serve better? And we serve better by being engaged and communicating and forming partnerships with everyone in the county, community leaders in the county, and law enforcement. And when I'm elected as county attorney, that will be my focus. How do we improve those things so that we serve better? And I've been doing those things over the 19 years I've been a prosecutor. It's easy for me to say that these are the things that I want to do, but these are the things that I've been doing for the last 19 years. And I wouldn't have the endorsement of over 100 officers here in Woodbury County if I hadn't been doing those things. And so that's what I intend to do as county attorney, and I would appreciate the vote and believe that I can lead the office in the right way, in a new way.
Thank you. Mr. Jennings.
Yes, I'm going to close by just stating when I talk about my involvement in the community and wanting the community to be better, those are just not words. That's from active involvement. So I'm going to just go down some of the list. And again, I came to this community in 1987. Junior Achievement Volunteer, a book reader for elementary schools, did most of them. Miss Limerick at Emerson School did it for 3 years straight. March of Dimes walk organizer, Martin Luther King Jr. keynote speaker a couple times. Martin Luther King Jr. community choir. Big Brothers Big Sisters, volunteer for 3 years for a young man. Siouxland Sleep Out participant, Gigi's Playhouse walk run organizer, coach middle school boys and girls basketball, coach boys and girls youth soccer, coach nativity football, 2003 Catholic schools champion, proud of that. Special Olympics volunteer, have done that ever since high school. Install new fire alarms for low-income residents, helping sandbag during Missouri River floods. There are many things that I've done. So when I talk about wanting this community to be better, grow, raise my family in, I mean it, and that's only half the things that I've done.
Thank you both very much, and thank you both for running for office. We appreciate your willingness to serve. Let's give our candidates a round of applause.
Thank you.
And I'd also like to thank our panelists for participating. We couldn't do this without you, so thank you very much for being here. Thank you to our timekeeper. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Sioux City, I want to thank our audience for attending in person and for watching tonight's forum online. We would also like to thank Steve Warnstadt and Chris Mansfield of Western Iowa Tech Community College for their assistance, and special thanks to all of the students in the mass media program for their great work. Thank you to the panelists for their thoughtful questions, and above all, we wish to thank our candidates for their cooperation and commitment to public service. I would like to remind you that the upcoming election is Tuesday, November 8th, with polls open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. A listing of your precinct is available for the County Commissioner of Elections at the Woodbury County website or at the Woodbury County Courthouse, room 103. There are 2 other methods to cast your ballot. You may fill out an absentee ballot request form available in the entry area and mail it to our Woodbury County Commissioner of Elections, who will then send you a ballot to complete and return by mail. You may also opt to vote early by casting an absentee ballot in person at the auditor's office in the Woodbury County Courthouse, room 103 during regular business hours, or at Longlines Family Rec Center beginning on October 19th from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. All absentee ballots need to be received by the auditor's office by the time the polls close on November 8, 2022. If you have questions, call the Woodbury County Commissioner of Elections at 712-279-6465. We have voter registration forms in the entry area. You may register to vote at your precinct on Election Day, provided you bring an acceptable ID, driver's license, or photo ID that is current and valid and contains an expiration date and has your current address. Should you wish to learn more about the League of Women Voters of Sioux City membership and our focus on nonpartisan and voter member education on issues facing our nation, state, and city, please stop at the table as you leave for membership information or email us at lwvsiouxcity@gmail.com. Do remember to follow us on Facebook. Thank you again for your participation this evening, and remember to vote in this and every election. Your vote is a precious gift. Use it wisely on November 8th. This concludes our candidate forum for the county races.